Hello everybody. Okay, in this screencast we're going to call a callable function that has been deployed on the cloud in a mobile app, in an Android application. And it's technically straightforward. I'm going to follow the instructions that are listed in the how to set up your client environment. So I'm using Android. So basically what I did is I created a project in Android and then I added the Firebase functions library. I added other stuff also, Firestore and Firebase Analytics in case you need it. And I followed just the instructions that were listed here. So basically you need to add the Firebase BOM and the Firebase functions, right? So we did that. And I also included the file, you know, the Firebase, the Google services.json file, which is how you integrate Firebase into a project, right? And added the services and so on, whatever you need to integrate Firebase. This is something we already know how to do. Now, in order to call a function, if you look a little bit here, basically we get an instance of this Firebase functions, right? And then we use it. So let's see what's happening here. So basically we'll get an instance of Firebase functions. That's what I did here. Firebase functions. Now, it's a two-step process. So basically what we need to do first is to call the function and get a task, and then assign to that task an onComplete listener. So basically if we look at the code that they posted here, basically you create a method and that method returns a task. And what this task is, the task will include here is a string. The string is basically what the callable function returns, what kind of data you want to come back from the callable function. Actually, what is the final data format that you want to receive? It doesn't have to match directly what the callable function has to return. But in this case, let's just start with a string, and then I'll show you another example of how you can change the type. So basically what happens is that this method is going to return a task. This is the data that you can pass, and the data has to be passed as a map. And basically function, get callable function, this is the name of the function. You call it based on the data that you create, you can pass it. These are the parameters that you pass the callable function. And then .continue with, this basically what's going to happen is that as the response comes back, the response comes in here, right? And basically the string is what this is going to return, right? So let's have a look, and then maybe we can discuss it as we're coding this, right? So basically the idea is very straightforward. So we'll create a function. So basically private, and it's going to return a task, and that task is the whatever the parameters or the data is going to be. And then I will say create or maybe call hi world. This is the call hi world function, and here we are. And basically the hi world function in our case, let's give it some data. So let's say here it is, and now I'll do a control Z, and if you do options enter import, there are two of them. I'll pick this one, which is the Android GMS, right? Now you can have some string, let's say for example the name, some name for example, right? And hash map, so we need a map to hold the data. Map is string an object, here it is, and this is data equal new hash map. Here we are, and options enter, here it is, and then data dot put name and name, right? So basically we do something like that. And then to call the function, you use the m functions dot get callable function. Here it is by the name, and the name is going to be whatever name we had here. So basically the name is hi world, right? So here it is, and here is the name hi world, right? And then dot call, and you pass it the data. Call, pass it the data. Here it is, right? Continue with, and we're going to use the continuation here. So continue with. And you see here, this is a continuation. This is when you make the call, the continuation is going to, it's like a handler that is between the onComplete and the continuation. So anyway, so continue with is going to return, is going to be called when the response comes back, even if there is an error. And it is going to give you a staging where you could go in and update the result such that it matches the format that you want. But anyhow, so we go here, it requires a new continuation, and here we are. And basically we would like the continuation to return a string, so it's going to be a string. Here we are. Now it's not happy because we have to implement a method here, so we go here, implement a method, and here we are. And you can see basically what is going on is that because we picked that it's going to return a string, it returns a string, and it gives you the ability. So basically this is actually the task. If you look at it, what this function is going to return is actually the task. So this is the task. This is the task equals this, and then basically you just return the task. Return the task, right? So this is basically the whole process here, just returns a task, right? So now what I could do, I can just return here, right? So return this, and that becomes my task that I'm going to return. Okay, and now if you look, what's happening here is that this can throw an exception if you look at it, right? So anyhow, so now let's look at what we're going to do here. I'm going to return, you could say if task is successful, you know, then you could do something here. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to return, if you look at the example that they have here, it returns the result. So I'm going to, and they say this continuation runs on either success or failure. But if the task has failed, then the get result will throw an exception, which will propagate down. Cool. So it will throw an exception if it fails. Okay, good. So we are here. We'll copy this from here. This is the result. So I'm not going to do all of that stuff, but here it is. And I'm going to just copy the same process. I'm taking the data. So if you look, the task comes with some data. So if you look here, task.get data, get result, and the result is this, and then .get data. The data is an object. You see here, it's an object. It's not a string. So you always get an object back, but then you know that the data that that's coming in is a string, and that's why, because you see here, it's coming. You are returning a string right here. You're returning a string, and basically what we're doing here is that we're just getting that string, and then we are returning it as a result. Okay, good. So now when the user clicks the button, so there is a button in the app, right? When the user clicks the button, I would like to go in and trigger this process to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say call, and I'm going to say Bob, for example, this is the name of the person, Bob Smith. And then you go here, this returns a task. And because it returns a task, what you could do is that add on complete listener. Okay, new on complete listener. And you can see that the on-complete listener comes in with a task that is a task which has a string parameter, right? Which is exactly what we have here, right? Now I could go here and could say if the task is successful, then do something else, do something else. So basically, if the task is successful, I'll just say log d, print for me the task dot get result, which is a string, right? And then we go here. That, and then otherwise I'm going to do task dot get exception dot print stack trace. So here we are, and if we run this, basically when we click, we create the call to the method, to the function, and then it comes back to the on-complete listener to decide on if the task is successful or no. All right, so let's have a look. Logcat. I will delete all of this, and I click on submit. Oh, I need to run the app. Let me run this app. Okay, here we are. Now I'm going to click on submit, and you see here what I'm receiving back, on complete, and I'm getting the task result. Why am I getting it like this? Because I basically this is what the function is going to return. So let's change this function a little bit. So it's returning a string. So let's say hello from hi world. Hello, maybe we want to say your name, right? For example, and your name is going to come in as data, and data, here is data, right? And data has a name inside it. So I'm going to return back your name. So basically I'm going to say hello data.name, and I'm going to concatenate to it. So hello, it should say Bob Smith from Hello World. So I'm going to save this, and then I need to redeploy it. So I'm going to go in here and deploy only the functions. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's redeploying it, and it's uploading, and here we are. And I could also make it only upload that function. I don't need to deploy the other one. I could only deploy, say, hi world, but it will take a little bit of time. But anyway, so now what I'm going to do is that you're sending me some data, and the data is being consumed in the function by, you see here, I'm returning back to you data.name because it's expecting a name here, right? So data.name, and I'm going to bounce it back to you, right? So now when we run this, let's see what happens. So instead of just saying hello from Hi World, it's going to say hello Bob Smith from Hi World, right? So now that's what's going to happen. So let's wait a little bit until this happens, and then it runs. The other example I'm going to demonstrate is that how can I return an object. So basically, what if I want to return an object of data? So how do I do that? I'll show you. And how do I create an exception? So I would like the method to fail. So how do I do that? So now if we scroll up a little bit, you will see that they describe in the example how to throw an exception. See here? You can throw an exception. So I'll copy this to show you the exception. And they have a whole list of exceptions. This is how you throw an exception. So I'll show you, but once it deploys, we'll do the test, and then I'll show you how to throw an exception. Cool, so we are good. Okay, so I'll just comment out to put this stuff here so that we could use it. How to throw an exception, right? So we'll save. But anyhow, so now if I submit, the expectation is that I'm going to receive Bob Smith as part of the response, right? So we click here, and here it is. It says, hello, Bob Smith from Hi World. Okay, so basically what is happening is you are passing it data, and as you can see here, we are consuming the data and returning it back. Okay, so what if we do this? What if we want to trigger an exception? So these exceptions, so all you need to do to throw an exception, you always need to return something. So you have to always return something. So this method always have to return. Let's say I would like to throw an exception. So I'm going to throw an exception like this. So basically throw new, and then functions. You already have functions, HTTPS error. This is the type of exception. There are a lot of types of exceptions. So basically, let me go in here and go do this, and you can see, let's see, where is it? HTTPS error. There it is. This is the name of the class in Firebase, and I need it to be in Firebase. So here it is. There we are. Okay, I'll do Firebase HTTPS error, and here we are. Oh, it's not showing up. There it is, and JavaScript SDK, and we're here. Cool. So here is the HTTPS. I'll put that here in case somebody needs to use it. Okay, here it is. And then when you go here slowly, you will see that there are a lot of types of errors. So basically, HTTPS error. It takes two parameters. There is a message and there is a name. So if you click on name, there's a whole list of them. Let's see the error code. Let's see the code, error code. Here they are. There is a list of error codes, so it's dependent. For example, unknown, not found, already exists, invalid argument, and so on. So you can do some error checking and so on. So I'll put that one also here, give you an idea of the different error codes. Okay, cool. So now let's pick an error code where it just says that here there is a problem. So basically what I could do is, let's say, invalid argument. So here it is, this, and here is invalid argument. Please provide the correct maybe ID of the user or something like that. Okay, here we are. Okay, cool. So that's this. Now I need to redeploy again. I'm going to trigger an exception. So basically I'm throwing an exception, right? So let's do this again. And I'm only interested in deploying Hi World, so I can do that. I'm only interested in deploying Hi World. So that's what's going to happen. Deploy only functions, and it's only going to deploy Hi World, right? Okay. So I just specified its name here. You see, Firebase deploy only functions, and then I'm only interested in Hi World. So now when I run this now again, the next time it should trigger an exception, right? And then the exception, the message that gets printed in the exception is this. So each exception has a message, right? So if you look, you will see in a little bit, right? So it takes a little bit of time to deploy, but once it gets deployed, we will be able to run it and then test to see what happens when you trigger an exception. It says that it's going to trickle up. So basically what's going to happen, the exception is going to happen, and then it's going to trickle up here. So you will see the exception, see the print stack trace printing, right? So let's see. Okay, so we returned and you could see that it completed. Now this means that when if we recap a little bit, you will see that when the function runs, it will throw an exception. Good. So that to me, this is just an error, just to test the error case. Okay, so we go back here, we submit, and you see here we're getting an error. Yes, submit again, and we're getting an error. Now, what if you would like to get the actual? This is because we're printing stack trace. If you can also do a logd and task, you can get the error, the message. Task dot get exception dot get message. You can get the message also here, right? So basically, we'll do this. We run it again, and now you will see that when I click submit, here is the message. Please provide the correct ID for the user or something. Now, what if you want the code? So to get the error code also is possible. If you look at the example, they have it here. See, they have it here. You need to cast it to a Firebase exception. So basically, if you look at what they are trying to do, basically they are doing it like this. They're saying that an exception, and then is it of type Firebase exception, right? And then you can get stuff like, for example, you can get the code. You can get, I don't know what these details is, but anyhow, you can also print this stuff. So logd, or we can just put a breakpoint here and see what does it look like. So here it is. I'll just put a breakpoint. Let's say, let's do a logd and okay, and I'm gonna do here, put a breakpoint here, and we debug. And okay, and I click on submit, and boom, we're here, and you can see now that the code is invalid argument, which matches what we typed here. You see here invalid argument, and similarly you can look at other things. You know, it's just an exception. Here it is. So you can get the code if you need the code. All right, and the message also. The message is I showed you how to get the message, you know, get message. All right, so that shows you the full round.